Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bible and Archaeology. I'm here today with Mary Kate to ask and answer some questions because we take a lot of questions from listeners, from viewers, but you as a person who is involved in all of the things that we do all the time.
I have some questions.
You have your own questions, and so we want to take a moment to say, Mary Kate, what questions do you have? Disclosure, she sent me these questions in ahead of time, so I went and got some answers together because I want good answers for your questions. So, what questions were pressing on your mind for this week to answer for yourself, very selfishly, and hopefully of interest to someone else as well?
So my first question is about body alterations in the ancient Near East. And how common were things like piercings and hair transformations, like haircuts, colors, tattoos? Because we see them so commonly in our everyday lives, in my everyday life, that I wonder, and you hear things about like nose rings in the Bible, but how common was the practice of these body alterations?
If I was to say, what do you think the answer would be? Do you feel like it's something that would be common because of its commonality now or what you know about it? Or do you feel like it would be something that is more fringe?
I feel like things like nose rings and earrings had a place in a higher status area. I don't think they would have been as common. But also, your facial reaction.
No, I think that's interesting because my second question was going to be, do you feel like there are any status distinctions between the types of things you're thinking?
Well, I think about precious metals and goods and jewels that go into making necklaces, earrings, things like that. Things you put on display because you want people to see them.
Yeah.
I feel like they would have a place in a higher status ranking.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to have, when it comes to jewelry, right? As you mentioned, the use of precious metals is an elite thing. It's something that you are doing because you can. Not everyone else has access to this, much like today. You are wearing jewelry, and that can say something about you, about your status, about your desire, about your role. All kinds of different things can be communicated through that. A couple difficulties I think we should put up immediately in trying to answer a question like this with body modification. Especially if we're looking towards something like either dyeing of hair or tattoos or piercings, is how do we know anything to answer that type of question? Because a lot of what we would want decays, specifically the human.
But I'm thinking more of texts on practices and art depictions and things like that.
That is where we do get some more answers. All right, if we're turning towards the text that, if you're on this channel, might be the first thing in your mind is, well, what does the Bible say about this? And people will go to Leviticus 19:28, which is, right, don't make any gashes on your flesh or tattoo any marks upon you. Okay, we've got this prohibition in Leviticus. Leviticus loves a prohibition. But, as we say often, if there is a prohibition, that means
presence of an action.
A practice is taking place. Now here, this is coming around in context of practices related to the dead, in memory or in mourning. That doesn't mean it's the only context. I'd say another verse to put on here that maybe is less familiar in people's mind of, well, what does the Bible say about tattooing, is Isaiah 44:5b, where it says, yet another will write on the hand the Lord and adopt the name of Israel. So we have a different version where here it's not condemned, but something that is marking you being brought in. And so to answer some of this, I think if we say, do these things take place? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tattoos take place, piercings take place. We got descriptions of how you will pierce the individual's ear with an awl to show that they have been a slave and they've been freed from that, but they've chosen to stay because of their family, so you pierce their ear. So we have these types of descriptions.
You pierce slaves' ears.
Yes.
To signify.
That it becomes an important part.
Interesting.
Because we do have some individuals who partake in these types of practices as a show of wealth or ability. We have an interesting collection of mummies from ancient Egypt that range from 2000 BCE to 300-ish BCE, where there are tattoos on those mummies. And they're almost all female mummies that have these tattoos. But out of those, 40-ish, that's a small sample size.
Yeah.
I think another famous example people think of, not from this context, time period, or world, but is Otzi the Iceman, who has tattoos on him. There's debates, though. If you just go to him, a more recent example, he has tattoos on his joints. So are they symbolic? Are they medicinal? What are these supposed to be doing? We have limitations in what we can understand. If we look at the texts and the artifacts, whether they be figurines, whether they be depictions, we have another set of we have things, but what do these things mean and what types of biases can come in? Let's say we have figurines. We have figurines from Egypt and other places where there's paint on the figurine. Does that depict a tattoo?
Yeah.
Or is that ritual painting?
Yeah.
So we start to get some difficulties within those. Not all of them are negative. The Egyptian mummies are an example most people point to say possible ways that you are choosing to participate in this. But a lot of them are more negative in use, in identifying someone as a slave, as a prisoner of war, or as someone who is dedicated to temple service. This is what we get the most of from like Babylonian records that talk about you are marking this individual as property or as dedicated. If you think of like the mark of Cain, like, oh, there's something that you need to know about this individual. And interestingly, there are specific references where they talk about someone not being marked as like unique in their status.
Okay.
So it is a highly prevalent thing in certain contexts.
Okay.
Not always negative, but a lot of times it is negative. And then I think for our perspective of that question, it's like, well, is it, I think sometimes the polemic of like the Bible of don't do this has been swallowed so fully to go, well, then nobody was, or it's all negative. And a lot of it can be, or is used to marginalize or sequester someone. But we run into all these types of barriers of like, well, but what about what's not recorded? Or what about what doesn't get preserved? But things like hair dye.
Well, I think of when I came to that part of the question, I was thinking more in like Greek society when like having blonde hair is a sign of wealth because, you know, you're inside.
Well, so would you consider that? Because if we think, let's think of Greek paintings, like wall paintings, where you're going to have individuals who have lighter or darker skin depicting, okay, is this
like status versus being outside, being inside? Yeah.
Inside and outside. Would you call that body modification?
I think refraining from being outside to preserve a color of your skin is a form of body modification.
And that ties to then some of those social status concerns. Yeah. So I think like there's these differences as we move through time periods and as we move through different cultures, the standards shift.
Yeah.
In one, it might be used negatively to depict a status and ownership about an individual. And in another, it might not be that. The same thing, whether it is the most common forms of like the permanent body modification are creating scars, scarification, tattoos, or branding, which are typically shown as like most of the textual records. Those are we are imposing this on you.
Okay.
It's not something that you are doing. However, we have other instances like those mummies where, well, were those imposed on them or were those things they chose for themselves? Can it be both? Can it go in between? We have limited insight into it, but we know it is a practice that is taking place because it gets talked about, because it gets prohibited in some instances. But even in those two Bible instances, the prohibition in Leviticus, but then in Isaiah, well, what is it saying when it's going to be you're marked on the hand? What is that saying about the process of, if we understand that as a tattoo, because it's the word like to write, to inscribe, very tattoo-like.
Yeah.
Is that a negative thing or is that a positive thing? Because it sounds then a lot like individuals who are dedicated to temple service. And so here you're being dedicated over to the Lord. Is that a positive thing for you or is that a negative thing? You're joining that community. Is that a good or a bad? So it's not always consistent even within those same cultures or texts, depending on who you are, how you are using it. But it's a tricky one, and it's one that gets a lot of attention now because it's like, well, are you allowed to have tattoos? Should you have? Who should have?
Yeah. Thinking of temple service, I have a question about pre-temple priestly systems. What did a daily routine look like that we can grasp?
That we can grasp is a big part, as always, throw a caveat out. What is the purpose of a priest at any time? I guess if we're going like tabernacle or temple system, what's a priest do?
I'm thinking about like priestly systems as familial orders. As in you have a son, probably not the first son, who comes from your community, who is meant to serve your community in this priestly system. Is that?
I mean, that is definitely a reading of Levites that gets proposed. Like, are the Levites their own tribe?
Yeah.
Or are they a tribe that is created out of need from individuals who have no standing, nowhere to go, no land holding, and so they are attached then to this system. Or are they something else? And again, that's a specific set within the world of priests. See our interview with Mark Lutcher, the Levites are a class or a standing within that. That's not everyone. And that means different things at different points of time. I really like that you separate it out, like, okay, in a period before, because there are so many different periods of what priests.
Well, because when I feel like I've learned about priests, and you have an affinity toward priestly castes, I would say.
Yeah, one specific priest in particular.
Just one, but when I feel like I've learned about priests, it's always been in the First Temple or Second Temple period.
Yeah.
It's never that liminal space before of what were we doing before we had, because the priests play such an important role in temple systems and temple functions, sacrifices, things like this. But before we have those set systems, what are they up to?
Well, where could they be? If we're in the world, if we're in the land before temple time, where could priests be functioning?
We could be dwelling in households, in communal areas, things like that, like early, not temples, but temple-like systems.
Yeah, the sacred spaces that exist before the tabernacle exists, before centralized temple. And even when we're talking about like First Temple, as we know from excavations at Moza, there are rival temples that exist nearby and further away, as well as that the refrain on every hill, under every green tree, there are these sacred sites that exist at a variety of locations. If we take the text at face value when it's talking about the divided monarchies, okay, well then there's also those sites at Dan in the north and Bethel, among others. So there are lots of potential places for priests to be existing within temple systems, whether that's that unified or just these have started to emerge. But if we go back into the mists of time, or we try to before that, it's really easy to get lost, I think, because we don't have much. Like, what are we going to look at? It's another one of those questions, well, what could answer this question for us? Because we have archaeological remains that speak to activities happening somewhere, maybe like at a cult site.
Yeah.
But does it tell us who is doing those things? Is that the purview just of a priest? Or is that like when we see the patriarchs in Genesis setting up stones and offering things themselves? Are they acting as priests? Are they priests? Or is that in a time before priests?
Like when, I guess, the distinction of priest, because if you're acting in these cultic sites in these cultic ways, does that designate you a priest? Do you have to be ordained? And I think of that in like a Christian context, like.
Which is a good context to point out, because we bring in a lot of baggage into reading these types of things. So I think if we say we have limited information, a story that could be helpful in trying to understand this is that of Judges 17 and 18, the story of Micah, his idol, and the Levite. And Levite here is his name, but also if you read this, you're like, well, but he's a Levite, but he's not from the tribe of Levi. So like this is already an identification that you can become a Levite out of a different group.
Yeah. Because
you become attached to it. And so in this story, Micah takes a bunch of silver and makes for himself an idol. Yeah. In addition to an ephod. And at first, for this household idol now, he appoints his son as the priest. So from his own family, he chooses someone to be, of my sons, one of you is going to be priest over this, until a Levite comes along. And he says, well, would you like to be in my house? And the Levite says, sure. And so then he comes in and functions as priest within this household. Okay. And the text also tells us that he has, now you're going to see it differently in your NRSV. Your NRSV gives it to us as shrine. Yeah. But technically the text says it's a house of God. And so has his house become the house of God? Yeah. Has he built a secondary system, like attached? Because we should think of houses as complexes. Like, is there a new complex that is the residence of the idol that has become a house of God? You can think of these, if you go to museums that have artifacts from the Iron Age, you're going to see these small-ish altar-like structures that are these houses of God themselves that replicate some altar practices inside of them. So what exactly is happening still gets messy, because we have polemics coming into the text too to say, well, you shouldn't be making these idols. You shouldn't be doing these things.
So with this, can it be maybe assumed that pre-temple priestly functions existed within these household idols and these household religion.
It's definitely a place that it can happen.
It can happen.
In the household is certainly a place. Now, does it have to just be a priest? Right? Judges 17:18 says no. It could be someone from the house.
Okay.
So the son was eligible to serve as priest before they got replaced by the Levite.
Yeah.
Another option could be, well, is it just sons who are doing these things? Which is where Genesis 31 might give a different option where, okay, Rachel steals the household idols.
Mm-hmm.
We know of these existing in the archaeological record, these JPFs that are found in households, these pillar figurines that seem to indicate different concerns in their shape and in their potential fertility connections is one way they typically get understood. And so does that open up different individuals to participating over religious practice in the household in a more feminine way that would not be identified in the text as priests, but as a place where maybe they are competing depending on your standing for what and for who. And then you could move to places like those local shrines. That's a place where someone would be functioning, which is something we see preserved in that text over time, which is where, like, once we get the destruction of some of those with religious reforms to centralize, well, you have a lot of upset priests now because they had been associated with those sites for a long period of time. But we still have difficulties of like, well, who was doing what there?
Okay.
It's hard to say.
So
Can we take everything the text says at face value? Hard to say.
So if these household priests, when we're having these reforms, if they're getting all their stuff knocked down and they're pretty mad about it, can we again assume that, I don't know, these household gods had a broader function in the community, but not in the centralized religion, like part of it? Like, and then I'm thinking again, I'm bringing in lots of things here, but like practices like the Witch of Endor, like practices like more what we would associate with cultic practices.
Yes. The cultic and religious distinction is an important and difficult one.
Yeah.
Because, well, what gets called cult? That which is not recognized as the official religion.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the activities that happen in the domestic space get tagged as cult.
Yeah.
Well, what's the difference? It's happening here versus happening there. And so it's
home
not.
versus, yeah.
And it's a different individual who might be doing it. And so it is secondary until maybe it's not. And it moves over and the same practice is happening, but in a different place with an improved person at an approved location. Okay, now it's official religion. But that's a part of the polemic that can be hard to get behind when the text is preserving the tradition that wants to speak about those things negatively.
Yeah.
Because it's wanting to say, please, please, please don't do that there. You should be doing this here instead. And sometimes it's specific practices like the Witch of Endor, which is saying, don't engage in these things. And yet acknowledging that they did and it worked and the king participated and the implements were there and it was at the house. But don't do it, but do it. But we acknowledge that it happens. Same thing, like this lives in a space too, archaeologically, that has gotten, maybe depending on who you ask, less attention than it should have in the past.
Yeah.
Because the big spaces get a lot of attention. The temples, the palaces, the big monumental buildings, which makes it hard to understand, well, what's happening outside of those when maybe the excavations of those have not been as detailed in their records for, well, what's coming from where? What do we know about what's coming from where? What context can feed into the understanding of these things? Also worth throwing into the pile here, spaces. If we're looking at cult sites, if we're looking at domestic sites and overlap between the two, spaces do not just serve one purpose. There can be multiple activities and persons who use a space. So if we say we have something here that looks religious or cultic in nature, and next to it are tools for this, and next to that are tools or implements related to a different activity, and next to that is one more pile. Is the same person doing all of those things?
Or is it
4 people, 5 people, 2 people? How do we differentiate who might be using what and when? Are they all related or are they different? It can be really hard to distinguish, and especially if we're trying to look for parallels in the text. Is it giving us information about that, or does it not really care? Because it may not want to preserve what were priests doing before they were centralized, because we want priests to be centralized. And at times there are.
Yeah.
And
well, there's little
there's
glimmers.
There's glimmers. And another one of those glimmers is connected to my favorite guy, but then also texts like Exodus 32, these priestly violence traditions that tie into to say, well, do they have a standing in holy war or in sacred war? Is that why they get associated with sacrifice? Does that come secondarily to bring those things in? Another layer of potential difference to say, well, are they just operating in these spaces? Are they operating everywhere? They're able to shift around, it seems, to move between places. So it's hard for what are they doing? What is the function, though, that they're doing is still largely the same. They are the intermediary between you and whatever you are seeking to appeal to or whoever. And so they serve as that sacred intermediary between the sacred space and the profane, the regular space.
Yeah.
Be that at your home, at a local site, or in the temple.
Okay, a little bit of a gear shift now.
Okay.
How much alcohol did people actually drink in the ancient world? And how much access did lower class individuals have to alcohol?
When you say alcohol, what do you have in mind?
Well, yeah, beer, like beer culture, but also like broader fermented drinks.
Oh, so, okay. Because I think this is an important, when we say alcohol.
Well, we think of,
like, because your mind could go beer. It could go like to spirits. It could
wine,
go to wine.
Yeah.
It might be all encompassing. It might be different. Because I think in order to answer this, we kind of have to step one step behind using alcohol as our term.
Okay.
And go towards, well, if we use beer first as an example. And we can selfishly plug here our interview with Tate Paulette in his.
This is a thing that got my gears turning.
In his book about beer in ancient Mesopotamia, because we know that beer is prevalent in the ancient world. It's not always as well recorded as many things within it. But ancient Mesopotamia is a world where we do have a lot talking about beer, giving us visual representations of it. We have the archaeological record of beer production. So there's a lot that we can say there about beer specifically. So if we use them, what's the answer? Do they drink a lot of beer or not?
Well, I think they definitely drink a lot of beer.
They definitely drink a lot of beer.
And women are the ones brewing the beer largely.
Not only, but yes, largely.
Largely.
They are heavily connected, and in part because the goddess of beer is a goddess, and so then there are female workers connected to that. There are male participants within it as well, so it moves back and forth, which is an interesting part of beer in the ancient world. Especially like if we look at, let's focus on ancient Mesopotamia then. It moves through the different social standings. It moves across all persons.
Okay.
It moves across all different spaces. So it can happen in the house. It can happen in the temple. Taverns exist. It can happen there. Who can make it? Different places, different things. Who will drink it? Everyone.
Okay.
And by everyone, I do mean everyone. Like we have textual records talking about children drinking beer.
Oh, okay. Like everyone is drinking beer.
Everyone is drinking beer. And there are, I guess, several answers for why everyone might need to be drinking beer.
Okay, what's that?
Well, beer is more than, if we remove beer from just thinking of it as like beer alcohol culture, beer is a central staple in the diet because it's a place of calories. Beer and bread, two things you have to have in the ancient world to survive, to stay alive. Your calories are going to come there. But also, much like fermentation has done and still does for us today.
It's good for your gut health.
It can be good for gut health. It can be a way to turn undrinkable water into a drinkable liquid.
Yeah.
So it's a way to change that to give you still the intake that is the grain from your bread and water, bringing those two things together in the way that, fermentation of other things does to make this now drinkable. It's not going to kill me anymore. It turns it into something new. So beer serves an important role there. And a part of why, well, it's eligible for children to drink, for men to drink, for women to drink, for workers to have on the job site, to be a part of temple practices, to be a part of feasts in the palace. Everyone can drink beer. There's lots of recipes. There's different descriptions of flavor profiles that can get brought in, depending on where it's coming from and who it's for. So beer, a lot of beer. Is it alcoholic?
Yeah.
Is a different question.
Okay.
So that one is one that we don't know.
Yeah.
Because we have some descriptions that seem to say maybe somebody's getting tipsy. Like maybe they had too much.
Well, don't we have records of like the Babylonian women just getting very drunk?
So you have these descriptions that seem to sound like someone is intoxicated. And you can think of these from the Epic of Gilgamesh. We have descriptions there. We have things coming from the imagery where like, are these people drunk? Or from other poems that seem to sound like intoxication taking place. but we're also like going through the lens of translation. So is that what that is?
Yeah.
Or is that not? It's also hard for us to try to recreate or understand because
Yeah.
we do have recipes for beer.
And that's what,
Slight changes in the way you prepare it or the way you ferment it or how long or what you introduce can make it more or less alcoholic. And so for us to say, well, we can recreate this because we have a recipe, you can, but slight changes in the way we do it or the way that the ingredients are now versus the way they were then can make a difference there. So is it alcoholic? It looks like maybe sometimes, but maybe not all the time.
What about wine?
What about wine?
Is alcohol content of wine?
Again, hard. It can depend on how you are making it.
Yeah.
Because wine, we do similarly see, especially if we move later, like into the Greek world.
Yeah, because in the
We
Greek
get
world,
pretty clear indications that people are getting smashed on.
yeah.
And throwing
We've got
up.
diet.
And
Yeah.
the things
We've
that
got
go
the god
with
of
it.
wine, and we've got drinking contests and symposia. And
Yeah, you have drunkenness that gets heavily connected with wine. Right, the later that we go, that these things exist. The further back in time we go, again, it starts to get a little bit more hazy. But we know that beer is being consumed through the ancient world until today. Wine, the same thing. Also just other fermented spirits, using other things to create drinks that bring flavor and also bring some health because I can drink this and not die. The question gets a little more tricky of like, is it alcoholic or is it not?
Or is it kombucha?
Is it more like the booger drink kombucha? Is it being made in the temple or for the king? It might be different in that versus in a different standing lower down. I mean, I think if we go to like the story of Esther, there's discussions of wine, heavy and free amounts of wine.
Yeah, they're having like a 100-day drinking party.
There's going to be a giant feast, lots of wine introduced. Does wine play a role in the events because are they supposed to be drunk and we're reading them as not in a right state of mind and then proceeding from there? Or is that wine just something that's a part of feasting culture and they have it and it is maybe slightly alcoholic but not enough to get you drunk, which is why you can have it in unlimited amounts? Does it need to be cut? Does it not need to be cut? It can really shift around. So how much alcohol did people drink is harder to answer than how much beer did people drink? A lot of beer.
A lot of beer. Well, I think about also My Drunk Elephant.
Yes.
From Maccabees, where it's saying, the elephants are,
they're drunk.
They'd get them drunk to be aroused. But then Aristotle says something, and don't quote me on this, but he says we're giving the elephants like 5 liters of mead a day. That if Aristotle is not just talking out of Aristotle talking.
Yeah.
That's a lot of mead.
Yes. So you
and
have to ask some questions. As always, we have to ask questions about what they're telling us and how.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But that is one of those things where you'll have in one place it's telling us, yes, this is leading to intoxication or drunkenness or inebriation or whatever you want to call it. And in other cases, it seems like we can get away with having way more than you might think. Is it just because they built up a tolerance? Or is it because the alcohol content in that is lower? Because, well, how long do they ferment it for?
Well, also,
what do they introduce?
Yeah, diluting it, things like that. Like, okay.
So yes. Do they drink?
Well, yes.
Absolutely.
We know they're drinking.
Absolutely, we know that they're drinking. How drunk are they getting? Maybe a little less clear.
And everyone has access to alcohol?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody has alcohol. Now, of quality, that'll be different. Of quantity, that'll be different. Also, like region by region, do you have access to wine? Maybe, maybe not. Do you have access to beer?
Grapes and
beer is one that's easier to do because you just need a grain and you can get started. But do you have grapes or not? It might be moving wine into a place of this is elites only, or if you're in a region where it's prevalent, it could be something that is available to everyone.
Okay. So on that note of what the elites are getting, what are the most coveted foods, the delicacies in the ancient Near East? Like what food is, if you're going to a high class banquet and it's on the table and you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, they have that? What do we know about that?
We know some. Again, I feel like all of these, my answers, we know something, but we don't know.
But that's true with everything in the ancient world.
It is true with a lot of things. What would you want it to be? Like in your mind, if you are going to an ancient feast, if we pretend that this is a feast, and you walk in, what's the thing that you imagine being on the table as the one that you were like, I'm impressed now?
Oh, I think like some type of cake or some form. I don't like cake. But I feel like a cake is kind of, the way I think of cakes is it's extravagant. Also, I would love a bowl of olives stuffed with garlic, but
I mean, stuffed with garlic could be, more elite. Just the olives themselves, so that's pretty basic.
Yeah, it's pretty basic.
Again, depending on where you live. But this can be one of those distinctions in answering this question as well. It can depend on your region.
Yeah.
And the
combining
affluence of the eliteness that you are. Because if you compare, like if we put the kings of ancient Israel as one example, and then the kings of broader ancient Mesopotamia, big powers, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, on another table.
Yeah, what's going on at a Babylonian feast?
Their tables will look similar in some ways, but will also look different in others because, quite frankly, they are not equally powerful and wealthy.
No.
And so there will be commonalities between them. Wine and beer is going to be present. There are going to be grains and cakes. That's going to be present. Things like olives and honey, those things will be present. Meat is the thing that is going to be, this is the hallmark staple. I think if you think even just into European royalty and feast, what is the centerpiece of the table? It's meat. It is a giant boar. It is something that says, look at what we are able to do.
Yeah.
Look at what we are able to kill. Look at what we are able to eat. And so meat is going to be that most coveted thing on both of those tables.
Okay.
A difference, though, will go into...
What kind of meat?
What kind of preparation. So we have culinary texts from ancient Babylonia that describe recipes for things, including recipes for meat, which introduce lots of spices and additions to say, well, we have a thing that's already a prestige item meat.
Do you know what kind of spices?
Oh, it's the things you would expect. It's salt, it's cardamom, it's things like leeks, that are just seasoning vegetables. Sometimes we're like, well, what this spice be? But lists and lists of spice types that are going to be added to this meal. If we look to ancient Israel, we don't have those same types of meal prep descriptions. We do get a description of meat being present, but typically there it's going to be numbers. How many of these things, how many lambs, how many oxen are being slaughtered. If you think of the anointing of Solomon, it's 1,000 and 1,000. And look at the sheer numbers that we are going to kill and eat. And that is how we show our elite status.
Yeah.
Over here, they're still going to be eating a lot, but it's not just that we have the number of these things.
It's that we can add something to it.
Look what we're going to do to it.
Yeah.
And so we're still even better than you. You can have the meat, king over there. You can have access.
But we can season it.
Because that requires different connections.
Yeah.
It's different wealth. It's a different level of consumption because that spice is a conspicuous consumption object, as is the meat, and you're adding all those things together. And in a way that is, well, we eat this now.
Yeah.
And it's done. Like you can't preserve this if it's been cooked. If you salt it or if you smoke it, sure, you can preserve those things.
I like salami.
But the meat at the feast is we eat this now and we throw the rest away.
Yeah.
Or it goes to someone in a secondary status. Like this is disposable to us. And so if this is our regular daily income, that this is what we are eating, that is not what a regular non-elite individual, they are not going out and killing a lamb to have at the table. It's connected to festivals. The sacrifice of the animal provides meat at specific holidays and festival days because choosing to cull your herd is a significant hit on your sustainability, on the wool, on the milk, on the value of that. So doing that at a festival day is a way that everyone participates in some elite levels of consumption. But we know the text says, well, can you do this on your own? Or do you need to partner up with a couple other families to afford doing this? We get a line in Deuteronomy as well that I think is interesting, that in Deuteronomy 12, it says that when the Lord brings you into the land, then you will say, I am going to eat some meat. Because you wish to eat meat, you may eat meat whenever you desire. So Deuteronomy 12:20 saying, once you get there into the land of prosperity, into the land of milk and honey, this thing that you cannot normally have, meat.
Yeah.
You'll be able to have it whenever you want.
Okay.
Like the king can have it. For us, you go into a grocery store and there's meat all over the place. People eat meat with every meal. So that is an option that you're like, really? Meat is the thing?
Is this more like red meat? Like, I mean, a variety of
Varieties,
things,
yeah. So
but
red meat is the most common. Fowl is connected. And so fish, depending on your access. But yeah, those red meat staples, those big things, it's a big object to kill. The cow is a big thing. If it's a fatted calf, right? You are preparing this simply for the consumption of it. So it's not just the eating of it either. It's all of the preparation.
Yeah.
You are dedicating resources to preparing it just to be killed, and someone's time to caring for it just to be eaten. All of those things come in and say, this is what makes this that biggest luxury item on the table, around which there will be some cakes for you that might be seasoned. Maybe they're just made with better flour, depending on your standing. Are you using barley flour or using more refined flours?
What do we know about frosting?
Frostings. Like, that would require us to have sugars.
Yeah.
But you can introduce natural sugar. So are you bringing figs into bread? Are you bringing natural sweeteners into these things to make the cake more succulent, which is where we see some of those cakes going, using natural sweeteners in that way to say introducing fruits, those into them. You can use molds. We have molds of cakes to say, well, we're not just baking bread now.
We're going to do it in shapes.
We're doing something different. We're showing off with this. It's not just sustenance, but some of those food types are exactly the same. And they might be, you're still eating bread, but it's a different type of bread. I mean, it's the same now. If you go to a very nice restaurant, they might give you bread, but what's different about it? They have cooked it differently. They use different
it's got
types
like
of flour.
oats on the top.
It has things introduced to it. So it's much the same, where there's an overlap between regular and elite, non-elite and elite consumption, but it might be in the numbers, in the regularity, in the things that are introduced into it. And we get just little glimpses sometimes, if we're looking at the Bible, little glimpses sometimes that speak to this about, well, what are the kings taking? What are the kings going to take from you? The best of your what? Of your fields, of your olive orchards, of your vineyards. Still the same things that you have, but they're getting the best. Or things like Eli's sons. What do they do that causes them to be wicked? They are stealing the meat that is being boiled from the people that are bringing it. And they're taking it out of order, and they're taking the share that is not theirs. Because the meat is the special, the thing that is most coveted. And that's what makes them wicked, the taking of the meat. So even in that area, it's you as a regular person are getting the most coveted thing, and someone is stealing it from you.
Okay.
So meat is that thing that is going to be the most special item on that table.
Okay. Well, I think that's all of our questions.
We somewhat answered some of your questions for now.
No, we answered some of my questions.
These are wonderful questions. I love that you brought in priests and food, obviously. You can't tell that I have been imposing that on you at all.
No.
Nor was it imposed on me very happily at all. If you have questions about Mary Kate's questions, or if you have questions about my answers to questions, put them in the comments.
Or if you have more questions.
If you have other questions, send them in. We are happy to do these Ask Us Anything type of things. They're very fun because you knock over little moments that you don't think about, like body modification. Because when I thought of that one, I was like, okay, well, I think I have an answer. But immediately I go, okay, but I know what the text says. I know this, but how much evidence do we have? And in some places you're like, okay, yeah, we have proof some ways. And other places people are like, it'd be nice to know more. So if you have other resources, let us know. If you have other questions, let us know. But for today, we will leave the questions there. We'll be back with more questions in the future. Mary Kate, thank you for your questions.
Thank you for your answers.
I appreciate your curiosity. It is the best thing about doing this. For all of us here at Bible and Archaeology, like and subscribe wherever you find us. It helps us. Hopefully it helps you stay in touch with us here on YouTube. Happy to have you along. Until next time.